and we started to implement a very strong response to intervention in mathematics. We've implemented our academic parent-teacher teams, and I believe we're in third or fourth year of our academic parent-teacher teams, and we've seen a great increase in the number of teachers participating. Different slides, and sorry, learning the system. So in our initiatives, we actually, I think I've presented this slide before. It's very concise of what we teach, how we teach, and how we know they've learned, and what we do if we don't learn. So we sort of put these 5 initiatives in those 4 broad categories. The result of implementing these initiatives is we have an exceedingly positive trend in both reading and mathematics. What's interesting when we look at these positive trends is that reading is increasing faster than mathematics. So when we look at that trend, it makes us think, what can we do about mathematics that would increase the acceleration of students learning in that area? When we look at our achievement gaps, we're very happy to see that we are closing the gaps between our special ed, our ELL students with our Creighton School District students, and our Creighton School District students are getting closer to the Arizona percent proficiency. So overall, we have a very positive trend, our accelerated learning in our student groups over the last 5 years. When we looked at our stack bar charts, we're not looking at percent proficiency, we're actually looking at how effective are we being with our high group, our meets group, and then our lowest falls far below group. So you can see from this chart that we have significantly decreased the falls far below group in reading, and we're starting to increase that proficiency in the exceeds group. We're very excited that we have continued progress in the meets or proficiency on the Ames test. So I put in the trend lines on this chart just so that we can see that we have very positive trends for these areas. What we'd like to see is a remarkable decrease in the falls far below group, and we'd love to see a remarkable increase in the exceeds group. In mathematics, it's interesting, they changed the tests in 2009-10, so I only have 3 years of data available, but the good news about the data is we see a positive trend of decreasing the falls far below. We have a positive trend for exceeding the exceeds group, and we have a positive trend on proficiency when we aggregate it to the district level. And in Arizona, you've seen the Arizona Learn slides many times, so I'm just going to go through them very quickly. We've identified our schools that are their A schools, our B schools, and our C schools, and we can see how they've changed over time. So you probably will hear from the sites when they make the report about how they have plans for improving their letter grade or how to keeping the letter grade in the future. One of the slides that I haven't shared with you is the new slide, how does Arizona Learns compare to the other Phoenix Union High School partnership districts? We consider these comparable schools only because our kids go to the same high school with them. And what's interesting about Alhambra is they're still pending. I checked when these came out, which was in the middle of August, and then I just checked this morning, it's still pending. It's one of their schools that they can't seem to calculate what their letter grade is, so the whole district is considered pending. And I was anxious to see what Alhambra was going to score. But what we see is 6 schools increased in points on Arizona Learns and 6 decreased. Alhambra's not available, and one of the schools districts showed no change. So, and that was Cartwright. So we look at that because we want to stay comparable with our neighboring districts. This was on just the Arizona Points Learned. When we look at growth, and we're all very focused on the growth on Arizona Learns, when we look at the growth, what's interesting is we can see some districts showed a lot of growth last year, for example, Osborne and Phoenix South. And what we'd like to do is just sort of know what it is that they did to get their, what strategies they put in place to get their growth. What we note is 6 districts had decreased points in growth, and I've already shared with you that the Ames had a decreased proficiency at the state level in 3rd through 5th grade. Dr. Barber?
It's difficult for us to see, at least for people my age. It's difficult to see. I'm wondering if you could use the mouse when you're referring to specific categories that you're talking about that might help us.
Okay.
Thank you.
They should be able to stretch that part. What I would like to share with you, the new Title I accountability that we've received in just the last few weeks. In Title I accountability, I know I shared with you that with Arizona Learns, the ADE did submit a waiver to ESEA, which is Elementary Secondary Educational Act. And in submitting the waiver, they've had to come up with, what a surprise, new labels. And the new labels are going to be reward schools, focus schools, and priority schools. Reward schools and also what's called the pre-intervention schools will be not in school improvement process, but focus and priority schools will be in some type of school improvement process. And they actually give us some idea of how it's going to be calculated. So reward schools are divided into 2 types, high performing and high progress. Focus schools have issues within the school gap or issue with low achieving subgroup or low graduation rate, which doesn't count for elementary schools. In priority schools, those are schools that primarily have already been given a letter grade of a D. So as far as Creighton is concerned, we actually have 3 schools that received labels under these conditions. So we want to celebrate Whitmore Prep because they were reward schools and they received a highly performing label in the reward school category. 2 schools were labeled focus schools and they had the same area. It was within school gaps and low bottom quartile. And these are actually 2 new ways of looking at data. And so we'll be sharing that with our principals in the future. And Ed Services actually worked on the SMART goals today so we could share it with the principals when they start writing their school improvement plans. So right now we have 2 schools that are focus schools, and that's Excellencia and Mackin. So the focus schools, like I said, they have said that the focus schools have a highest within school gap, and that's talking about that percent passing rate compared, comparing the passing rate of the lowest quartile to the 50th percentile quartile. And then they also are looking at that gap in the growth of that lowest quartile, looking at the previous year to the current year. And then they'd also like to see a certain percentage for the lowest quartile group. So it's interesting that this information hasn't been shared or trained in from the state yet. So we're waiting for those PowerPoints to come out so we can train our principals. So right now we have no priority schools in Creighton School District. Any questions about the new Title I labels? So I've shared with you our stack bar charts, and we've already talked about how we've seen a decrease in proficiency in reading and math in 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, and then we've seen an increased proficiency in reading and math in 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade. So we're very happy about the increase in scores for our middle school, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and we're focused on how can we improve our programs for 3rd, 4th, and 5th. So if there are any questions about the aims for proficiency or stacked bar charts. On AZELA, we still are evaluated on AMAOs. We're evaluated on progress, which is moving students from one level to the next level on the AZELA test, and those levels are pre-emergent, emergent, basic, intermediate, and proficient. And then we also evaluated on reclassification rate. And so the state gave us a AMAOs for reclassification rate, and currently we need to show a reclassification rate of 25%. Maybe you remember that some of our schools didn't get the AZELA 30% reclassification rate. but they still made the AMAO at 25%, and that's because those two are two different scales. And I do want to say that even we have maintained a high reclassification and progress rate, even though our numbers of ELD students are decreasing. So I put this slide here to talk about the numbers of students we have, which came from that first page in our annual student assessment. Well, one of the really interesting things that I think I've already shared with you, but I still want to celebrate, is that our science 8th grade scores really showed an increase across the district. And when we talked to our science teachers, we realized they really appreciated the time that they received to meet 10 times during this last year to actually talk about their units, talk about their instructional strategies, and start to plan their assessments. And so what we saw was really a quite profound increase in scores at almost every site. So we would like to celebrate our Ames Science 8th grade scores. One of the interesting pieces of data that we look at each year is the CT4S. And we talked to WestEd about how we're making this data even more relevant. So right now, the data that I've shown you in the past about CT4S, which is our Teach for Success classroom observation tool, this data has included those teachers that have been designated as Tier 1, 2, or 3 on the campuses. This year, we are going to have sweep data that's going to be separated from the teachers that are being coached. And so we should be able to see better exactly what percentage of our T4S elements are being observed when we visit the classrooms during sweeps. So we're looking forward to being able to interpret the data a little bit clearly. We do know that what teachers do in the classroom is highly correlated to their Ames scores. It's really a quite high number, and so the higher the T4S elements seen on a campus, the higher the scores are on the Ames test. So we're very encouraged to keep working on trying to get to 80% of all T4S elements are observed in all classrooms during any visit. Any questions about T4S data? Just to remind everybody, this was sort of one of the talking points that we developed with WestEd. Creighton School District is participating in school reform that is systemic and multifaceted. This reform is a deep philosophical paradigm shift to accelerate student learning. So we aren't doing something that's really simple. It's sort of the analogy I think Dr. Barber says, we're changing every wheel on the bus as it's driving down the road. So sometimes we hit a bump. In our continuous improvement process, when we evaluate our data, we see over the last 10 years we have a very positive trend in accelerating student achievement in reading and math. Over the last 4 years, we participated in the Ellis and WestEd partnership, and over the last 4 years, we've seen an increase in the acceleration rate from what it was prior to our WestEd partnership. Any questions about the data from our continuous improvement process? So all of our campuses are involved in continuous improvement. They look at their data, they evaluate it, they plan and implement. And what you're going to hear today from the sites is what they're planning for the next year. At the district level, in reading, we are going to implement, based on the data that we've seen, particularly the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade did not have an increase in reading scores. K3 will implement the new Common Core standards, and K3 is participating in literacy workshops at this time. I believe Miriam Linden and her team has completed that first literacy workshop. In mathematics, and as you saw the chart, we have a steeper slope on the gain in the trend on reading than we have in math. So in math, we are implementing, yes, K3 has to implement the Common Core standards, but in math, we're actually doing 2 things. We're implementing our universal screeners in math 3 times a year, and we're doing an implementation of math fluency in the core classrooms Plus, we're providing professional development in a WestEd recommended math pathways and pitfalls that actually require the teachers to think systematically and at a higher order, and to plan lessons which require the students to do higher order thinking skills. Both of these professional developments are joined with high level of coaching and monitoring from the district level. Any questions about the district implementation of professional development aligned to our student scores? So I know I've shared the formula for success with you, and one of the main, what we have seen from staff surveys is this district usually needs to improve in communication. So we've really made an effort to communicate what the action plans are and what the district initiatives are each year. Because through increased communication, we build the vision of what the initiatives are each year, and we lessen the confusion of what the focus is for each year. So I know this was so you know, I got it off of Facebook, but you know, that it's up to me to make a difference. If it is to be, it's up to me. It's 10 two-letter words. But it really resonates with me because I think we all have to have the initiative to make a difference with our actions every day. So at this time, I'll be turning it over to the principals or the cabinet to ask questions and for the sites to give their reports.
So on that slide, which was science wise, I believe the header was. You don't have to go back to it. You mentioned the teachers said a big impetus, a help to them was meeting 10 times a year. Do other areas, other subjects have that same ability to meet 10 times a year?
Yes, our special area, when the science was meeting that 10 times a year, social studies middle school teachers were meeting and special area teachers were meeting, and our 3rd through 6th grade teachers were meeting in both reading and math.
Have you gotten feedbacks from the other subjects on how much those meetings help them or hinder them?
I do not have specific data on that. Do I have to volunteer? Sean, would you like to volunteer?
Am I there? Lynn, I just have a question. When I go back and look at the comparison districts that you have we identified how many priority schools there are or focus schools there are in those districts also?
No, I haven't, but I'll be happy to do that.
Okay.
I think that information is available.
And Mr. Gutierrez would like to start.
He did tell me that I had big shoes to fill, so. All right, here's the report for Larry C. Kennedy School. Obviously, our main goal is to maintain at least a B or improve to an A school. Some of the ways we look to do this is with our K2 reading skills, prevent students from being classified or being retained in the Move On When Reading initiative that's going to be happening for next year. And so in order to do that, our teachers are progress monitoring their students at their reading level and providing that information to us as a leadership team so that way we can provide interventions to students, or if it's a class problem, we can provide resources to the teachers. We also have, with our K through 2 students that are struggling, we have some classes that we have double-dipped them, which means they're receiving a tiered intervention, but they're also receiving another dose of the SRA program, which is another reading piece that they can help them focus on not being retained in 3rd grade. In the area of math, our goal is to increase our math scores in grades K through 8 on both the AIMS and the ISTE. In order to do this, again, our teachers are progress monitoring our students using an assessment that they provide daily. The students are also tracking themselves, and we're reviewing this information. We also have 2 grades that we're going to pilot the new math initiative that the curriculum department has come up with. And the last component is for the balanced math that taught that we working on last year. We have some sub-money that we're going to be provided, some job-embedded coaching and professional development with the teachers, so we'll be able to go in, observe a teacher that's teaching the balanced math and provide that immediate feedback to the teachers to make sure that they're using it appropriately. The next piece is focusing on the bottom 20th percentile, which is what Lynn talked about. We've identified our bottom 25 percentile, and we're actually going to even take it a step further because Lynn just presented us with the bottom 30%. So we're going to be looking at those students. The students are going to be monitored very closely by the teachers as well as the leadership team. And we've already made sure that those students that are not receiving either special education services or tiered interventions, that they will begin receiving those interventions beginning second quarter. Let's see here. PBIS, fortunately for us, we've had a history of having one of the lowest suspension numbers in the district, so we're going to continue with that. The way we're going to continue with that is refining our Tier 1 and making sure that the teachers are all teaching explicit instructions to the students as far as the high expectations that we have at Kennedy for our behavior. We're also going to be providing the teachers with re-engagement strategies to help those students that struggle with re-engagement in the classroom. And the last piece, I know as a district and then we as a school are looking at other options for Tier 2 and Tier 3 kids, those students that are always in our office or constantly making trouble, and just seeing what other support we can provide to not only them but as well as the teachers as well. The last piece is Kennedy has had an increase in refugee students. We're up to 59 this year. Last year we had about 20, so we're up about 39. And so for that, we've been able to purchase Rosetta Stone for the students, so that way that helps them with their English skills. There's also a new program that our teachers were actually trained on today. It's called Imagine Learning. It's very similar to Rosetta Stone, where they kind of learn some of the very basics. And it's nice because it's a computer-based program and it kind of adjusts its learning to where the students are. And the last piece is we've been able to provide translators to these many languages that we have at our campus for not only whole group meetings, but as well as individual conferences. Any questions? At this time, no.
So at Biltmore Prep, we are continuing, our goal is to, at Biltmore Prep, our goal is to maintain our A status, but also continue to make positive progress. So our first year when we achieved the A status, we were at essentially an A- with 140 points, which was the bottom baseline score that you could have to obtain that A rating. Last year we grew 12 points, and we were at 152 based off of our data from the last spring. So maintaining that A status, but also recognizing that there's room to grow because there's a total of 200 points possible. So we want to continue to emphasize that focus. Our second focus is technology integration. We have 2 flipped instruction classrooms at our school, one in first and one in fourth. And then in addition to those classrooms, the only difference with the technology integration with the rest of the teachers on the campus is that every teacher on the campus now will have an iPad of their own, an Apple TV, and an HDMI projector, because PTO is working with us. They asked us what our priorities were as far as making sure that we had technology accessible to our kids, and so they made that large purchase for our school. So we'll continue to think about not only providing the technology for the teachers, but also providing the professional development that goes along with that. I have 5 smart boards on my campus that weren't being used because the teachers don't know how to use them. And so we started off with professional development and how to integrate the iPad into the classroom, as well as those 5 teachers were pulled out as a small cohort and got a training on Smartboard and technology integration. And so we'll continue that professional development throughout the school year. So it's give them professional development and then ask them to implement and then provide that feedback. So it's that continuous cycle. And then our third big focus is really taking a look at I guess it falls under the umbrella of positive behavioral support, intervention supports, but we're calling it the SHIELD, and please keep that a secret because we want it to be a secret for our kids because it's not revealed yet. But I essentially took the idea from Camelback, and we've established kind of a mission statement about how we operate at our school, and it goes like this: we are a united community dedicated to developing students who are college and career ready and worthy of the Biltmore Shield. And each one of those letters in the shield stands for a concept and a way that we behave as a scholar. So S stands for stewardship, H stands for honor, I stands for integrity, E stands for excellence, L stands for leadership, and D stands for discipline. And so what we're doing as a group is we're collectively working together as a staff to really define what each one of those components looks like. So stewardship, it came from a high school, but it's not it's not too advanced for our kids to understand what stewardship means. And so our teachers are working on what does it look like, what does it sound like when a student at Biltmore Prep demonstrates stewardship, and then how do we measure that we're making progress in those areas. So we're in the process of developing that, and what it looks like, and our big reveal will be in January. And then finally, kind of alongside not a school-wide focus, but a focus for a program that we have on our campus, and that's our foreign language immersion program. Originally, the way that I kind of understood the plan is that the program was really developed to help kids acquire the Spanish language, and it really focused on oral language production rather than actually learning the grammatics and the writing and the reading of the language. And so that is something that we're kind of taking the program and stepping it up a little bit and learning how to integrate reading and writing and grammar of the Spanish language via the content. So that's kind of what we're going to do this year, and the strategies and the focus that we'll use to continue to accelerate the student achievement of our school.
Ms. Britannic, I have a question.
Sure.
Maybe Lynn can help, but when I was looking at school reports, the student achievement data, I was comparing Biltmore to Madison schools because I talked to a lot of those parents who are now interested in sending their kids to our district, which is amazing. And it seemed as though, I think Biltmore Prep was outperforming all of them except for Sinus. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
So what's going to take to get better than Sinus this year?
Our continued focus on the right things. And so when I think about, together as a staff, we decided what our focus is going to be, and it's really about empowerment of my teachers, empowerment of our students, and staying focused on the right things at the right time. And I think that that's what's going to help us. So instead of all of the things, we could focus on all the great things that we know are good for kids, but instead my approach as a leader is what are the biggest things that are going to give us the most bang for our buck, and let's get really, really good at implementing those. So I think it's recognizing the vision and staying focused.
Thank you.
Ms. Britannic, I think I learned how to work the microphone yet. Okay, good. First of all, I think that's great about the technology, the flipped classrooms, everything you mentioned. And my sincere hope is that between now and the time I leave the board, whenever that is, that we will have capital override and you won't have to go to PTO to get that, and all of our schools will have that. But putting my dreams aside for just a moment, in terms of the improvement that you have made, how have those been spread across the different grade levels, and how have they been spread across, in terms of the improvements in test scores, among those foreign language immersion students versus those who are not foreign language immersion students?
We've been able to make the progress that we have without the foreign language immersion students, as far as Ames data and looking at that. And that's really how we get our grade. It's really 3rd through 8th grade. So the progress is not coming. If you're thinking, if what I'm hearing you say is, how do those kids compare to kids who are not in the program? When we look at areas of ISTEEP and math fluency and reading fluency and preparedness for kindergarten, that comes through that those kids are much more prepared for school, but not by far, because we're getting the data that we are and the results that we are based on from kids who are not in the program. Does that answer your question?
It does. Are you also seeing, excuse me, similar levels of improvement in the older grades where there is no fly program?
Yes.
This is on, okay. To avoid, as I listen to Andy and Faith, we as one of the pleasures I've had to see over the years at Creighton is some of the similarities that we enjoy and some of the consistencies that we enjoy as a district and as the sites. For example, the Balanced Math Initiative that we all speak of and how we're implementing that. So we're trying to hit a couple of things that are our Monte Vista's personal challenges. But one of the ones I would focus on, and actually is my own personal and my leadership team, my new leadership team's focus. This is the first year for myself to have had such a turnover as far as the leadership goes and as far as the instructional part with the teachers. Quite a change. So the CT4S element, the professional development of my teachers, is the #1 thing. And so what we've done is a different tiered approach than perhaps some of the sites might use, or it could be similar. I've not had that discussion with them. But when we have teachers with new needs, remember we've spent 4 years learning CT4S, the observation protocol, learning what are these principles that we use. And so as you bring new teachers in, my challenges become apparent to me into how do you bring them up to speed without killing them in the process. And it's a balancing act. It's a very, very important thing to me as we look at teacher retention and those priorities. So what is it that a teacher, when they come through the door, what is it that I can expect of them that is going to move our school forward, that is going to maintain our B status, hopefully move us to an A, at the same time give them time to learn these skills. Teachers are coming to us, most of them have not had the prescriptive instructional techniques that we are using, for the Creighton way, if you will. And so when I look at my tiered, I have a tiered system for new teachers. I have a tiered system for existing returning teachers, and so you're really trying to differentiate the professional development at the same time bringing my leadership team. Who you can't do this alone as a principal. The training piece, the professional development on site, the in and out coaching and all that. So we spent a lot of time with the teachers on talking about what is it we really need, what is the most important out of the CT4S. It's not that you're giving something up, but you have to maintain a focus on elements and bring the other ones in as you go. Because if you notice, over the year we've added rigor this year, a push as we're moving to the Common Core. We're going to hear the conversation about rigor. Well, at the same time, for a brand new teacher who's coming in, sometimes just getting good, consistent instruction at the EPO and so forth is a good expectation to start, and then lift them up, but don't crush them in the process. So if I was to say what is my #1 focus, it's development of the 14 new teachers and the entire new leadership team that I have at Monte Vista. So that would be my #1. After that, I think it's real important to know, and it's going to be fun over the next few years, is the bottom quartile. We all focus on it, and we're always going to have a bottom quartile. And I love to listen to Ms. Bertavik as she talks about her bottom quartile looks a little different than my bottom quartile does. And it's exciting in a sense, but it's also good to know that a school like Monte Vista, that's a B school, that our bottom quartile, it's changed from last year to this year. As we do our RTI and our assessments and we look at who these kids are, they're different. There are some different kids. Now all of a sudden, instead of dealing with the falls far below, as we look, as Andy was saying, about 30 percentile or what have you, which is what Monte Vista is doing. We're looking, and you're starting to get some names up there that are into the approaches, that we're now suddenly providing some intervention. And as you do that, your intervention has to change. The scripted programs that apply to the lower end have brought about a great need at Monte Vista that we return, and I say return because I've talked to Dr. Boyle about this, as we return to some of the strategies where we're going to improve on the comprehension of our students. It's one thing to decode and to move on, but so that's a focus for ours too in the reading and the RTI process as we look at the bottom quartile. So. And then we continue one of our focus from last year. I would say we have 3 major elements. We have new teachers that are addressed. We have the reading, and balanced math comes in, of course. But and then as we look at, let's see, where was I heading with this one? But anyway, with the third component being our behavioral piece that we started last year. at Monte Vista, we needed to clarify our vision with regard to behavioral and the school climate and what does it look like. And so starting last year, we started in fresh. We were new to a middle school, and we didn't do a good job of making the behavioral piece go forward with the middle school in our development. We just didn't, we meaning myself, did not do a good job of getting everyone on the same page and integrating the behavior expectations, clear messages. You know, like you've got your shield going on. Andy's had great success at Kennedy with his behavioral components, and I'm learning from those because the middle school component was one that kind of we didn't do a good job. And so we're still focusing on that, integrating new forms of positive behavior, focus on the positive versus the consequences and so forth, establishing better communication, and those are the things that I think Monte Vista is working on this year if you were to stop by, which you are welcome to do anytime.
Mr. Madison, one of the most eye-opening experiences I had as a board member was going to Larry C. Kennedy and observing a class with a refugee student who was here for the first day, and it was eye-opening. And so to hear that there's an increase in refugee students in Larry C. Kennedy, it was like, okay, that's something I need to know as a board member. But I haven't heard it. I saw it there. I didn't hear about it, and I know our schools are not that far apart. And I live in the Monte Vista neighborhood. What does that population look like at your school?
Not near as affected as Andy is. I can list my families, you know, and I would say I don't know it for a fact, but it would not be far off to say 10 families and multiple children, but of a new variety of where all of a sudden my translation needs to come from a Northern African, you know, dialect. And so we see it, and we deal with it through specific translations and so forth, but it hasn't been as large a number as Andy's experienced. I don't know why that is, other than, you know, and the other way I can tell is when we celebrate birthdays, and you see a preponderance of birthdays of the same day, January 1st. And I learned very quickly that if I wanted to find out why is everybody born on January 1st, it's because if they were refugees and they came in and they did not have or celebrate a birthday as we know it, they were assigned January 1st. And so pick that up and we look at it. But so far, and they're spread across the grade level, so there's not a pocket where we see a lot of them. You know, and our ELD teachers are learning their strategies. That's been another piece of PD this year. And that's been given to everyone. And so with Nora Castaneda's program, that's been helping all teachers. And so the strategies are good for all. So I guess it hasn't been that critical. The cultural component is something I haven't addressed at this point because of not that pushing need. There are cultural aspects that you want to take into consideration. And I'm sure Andy is, as the numbers increase, some of the considerations that I'm not aware of that I probably need.
Thank you.
And speak for William T. Mackin School. Our school continues to be a case study in growth. When I go back through and look at our achievement data from last year, some of the things that I want to highlight include our growth in Arizona Learns. We grew 7 points overall from the prior year into last year's label. In the iSteep screeners of universal and basic skills, we grew from 50% proficient to 65% proficient last year. And on Ames, we grew 3% as a school in our overall proficiency from 64 to 67%. And in math, we grew 9% as a school from 45 to 54%. We had a very strong growth in our third grade scores in reading and math. We had high growth in the students who were fifth graders last year scoring at the Exceeds level. From the year prior. We also had very strong performance in middle school, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and growth in our Exceeds levels, particularly in 7th grade. So it is, needless to say, a disappointment to be in focus school status for federal school improvement, especially given all that. We're 2 points away from being a B school on the Arizona Learns scale. So we have had a tremendous amount of focus, attention, and effort placed in student achievement in reading, math, developing teachers' proficiencies in all of the instructional strategies and the response intervention process, both for behavior and discipline. So we have definitely been able to leverage all those things and move our students. This new way of looking at achievement and evaluating the performance of the bottom quartile relative to the rest of the student population does put us in this position of having like a point value on that scale of about 48, 48 and a half, something like that. And you have to be at 50 or greater. So we're just so very close. And, you know, we found ourselves there a number of times over the course of my tenure as principal. And we are there again, but we are standing on a firm foundation of having made significant growth over multiple years, and we're poised to do it again. This is all very much in support of staying the course. We develop and implement SMART goals for each grade level that have to do with increasing percent proficiencies by a minimum of 10% or reaching the annual measurable objective for the grade level, both in reading and math. We have taken the approach this year of looking at, you know, as opposed to like a program implementation, looking at each grade level and really saying, okay, within third grade, what does the student data currently say? What needs to happen in reading? What does the program need to look like in math? What does it need to look like in English language arts, particularly writing and grammar? And almost having a multifaceted approach instead of saying like, okay, well, fifth grade is our focus. There's things about our instructional program that have to be an area of focus, but in slightly different ways for each grade level, depending on the performance level of the students. We've started talking with the teachers this year, and I know many, if not all of my colleagues have already gotten to this point, but we really started talking about the idea of moving people, not percentages. So our SMART goals are typically always framed around increased proficiencies by 10% or 12% or whatever in support of an annual measurable objective. But this is about moving individual kids. So we can talk about Jorge, we can talk about Javier, we can talk about Maria, and what needs to happen for each of those. So to support that, to scaffold that, being in focus school status has really given us a great opportunity to look at the bottom quartile and all of our students kind of in that individually planned approach. So we have a group of gifted people really led by our Title I facilitator, our instructional coach, and our student achievement teacher who are all here tonight. And they're really evaluating each child, kid by kid, in order to determine what the growth need areas are, both in reading and in math. And if it is in math, why? Is it a basic skills kind of problem, or is it a more conceptual knowledge kind of problem that causes them to perform lower than expected? And then in reading, the same thing is true. Is it basic skills, fluency, or is it something more advanced like comprehension as relates to vocabulary acquisition? So we're trying to come up with a very skilled and laser-like approach so that we can provide the necessary differentiation for the students. Because as we evaluate our bottom quartile, just like Mr. Madison hinted at, the immediate assumption was, oh my gosh, our lowest kids must be so low. But when we look at it, we actually have students, there are false Fargo low students in that group. There's a whole lot of approach kids, and there's meets kids in our bottom quartile, because it's just your whole tested group divided up into 4 equal parts. So what you do with that group has to vary widely depending on where they fall within that group. So we are actively involved in analyzing it and putting together plans. We've been working closely with Cabinet, because there are some interventions that the district needs to put in place in terms of support for schools in focus status, and they've been very supportive at helping us ask the right questions and begin to look at the right kinds of strategies to implement to move that bottom quartile of students. As Mr. Madison spoke about teacher retention and staff, we do have 15 new teachers this year. So the growth that we intend to continue to make must be scaffolded by our continued work with our new teachers, building their foundational knowledge in standards and objectives, rigorous instruction, and all the other instructional strategies that we've been putting into place. And we really have established a rigorous goal of getting everybody really proficient, really fluent by winter break, and we're really working at that. And to support that, it's also been interesting to see our veteran staff, our people who have been on this journey of reform and transformation with us, rise to the challenge of supporting their new colleagues. Because most of the teachers that we hired this year are not brand new to the profession, but they are new to Creighton schools. And so when we do professional development training, very often what we'll do is we'll partner the staff, just sort of group them up, and it's almost a one-to-one match. Somebody who's been in Creighton before, somebody who's brand new, and they work together and scaffold one another and help their colleagues acquire all the knowledge and skills and learn what it means to be a teacher in Creighton schools. And they're doing it very, very quickly. So though we have had some significant turnover this year, the people who stayed and who are continuing to nurture our students are really people, they are points of pride for our district, they're points of pride for our school, and they're just working themselves to the bone to not miss a beat, to make sure that we are able to truly stay the course with these students, not just the bottom quartile, but everybody. So we're on the move. You are all invited to come and see us, help us anytime. And we are proud of what we have been able to do. I like to think of our C status right now really as more of a B- kind of situation because we are so close. And I wish I could say that we were already there, but as I said at the beginning, we are a case study in growth and how to continue to move, not always with big leaps and bounds, but in consistent ways over time.
Mr. Dupin, you've told us, I guess you said we can come visit and help.
Anytime.
And so what does that mean? Because I've visited, I don't know if it's helpful. I'd like to know what that specifically means for the governing board.
I think one of the most important things that a governing board can do is really be present and engaged just by being able to be face-to-face with teachers. So the teachers really have a sense that you know what it's like to be in their classroom. You know what their facilities look like. You know what their classroom numbers look like. You know what it feels like to stare into those faces and be expected to be prepared the way we expect our teachers to be prepared on a day-to-day basis. We run, in a given week, we run 9 planning meetings for initial instruction. They're facilitated by grade level leaders and our instructional coach. That's a very interesting experience. To sit down with the curriculum documents that we have created and think about those plus the assessments and think about how to turn those into 9 highly effective, highly meaningful, very relevant lessons and do it in 40 minutes time. We run 9 data analysis meetings a week where facilitated by a teacher grade level leader and our student achievement teacher, we put the results of the formative assessments out on the table. We relate those to our SMART goals. So, and then try to figure out how to turn that data and those misconceptions into 6 really relevant, really meaningful, really effective reteach or enrichment lessons. You know, just sometimes putting together the ideas and then hunting for the relevant materials is part of the challenge. So, you know, I think for teachers to know that the board is engaged and really aware of what that workload looks like, feels like, sounds like on a day-to-day basis is absolutely critical. And then certainly, you are all career professionals working in a variety of fields in service to our community. So when we try to create those awesome lessons, one of the things we have to do is establish relevance for the students, which is the answer to the age-old question, why do we have to know this? Well, a lot of why we have to do it or know it is so that we can have future opportunities. Opportunities for work, opportunities for professional growth and education. And you all are great examples of how a good education can open the doors of opportunity. So you can say, well, in my work, in whatever it is that I do, I use these skills in these ways. And that can open the doors of insight for teachers, I think, very often.
Mr. Dupin, you alluded to most of your new teachers not being new to the profession, but new to the school, to the district. I had the opportunity to visit this year our new teacher orientation in the district, and that was something I was struck by. I don't recall recall, if I have been to new teacher orientation, it's been a few years, I was struck by the fact that these were not all people who were 22 years old and fresh out of getting their BA. So I'm wondering if you have any idea, or if anyone else has any idea of what might be a draw for teachers to come to our district. I did sense that some of them were from out of state and were relocating here, but why Creighton?
I think that, and of course anybody can jump in on this, but one of the things that we do when we interview is we look for people who are positive, meaning that they have a positive outlook on life, they develop some strategies to overcome adversity or to deal with challenge and remain optimistic and positive all the time. We also look for people who really want to grow and learn. And so we speak to the most highly qualified of applicants about the professional development, the quality of the professional learning that teachers in Creighton schools get to take advantage of. And I share my personal experience. I've been employed in the Creighton district since 2004. And in that time, I have learned more about instructional best practice, teacher evaluation, assessment, coaching, feedback, the development of assessments, and it just goes on. And so to the right kind of professional, that is motivating, it is inspiring, and it is not, I mean, I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's not happening elsewhere like it happens here. We grow quality people here. And the people who left Mac and to go to other school districts did not leave kicking and screaming and in anger and disgust. They were marketing the skills that they had cultivated here. They went on to leadership positions in other school districts. They went to district level positions elsewhere. And they became instructional coaches and things like that. So, you know, I talk about that. And I do really believe that is something very powerful. It is very appealing to the right kind of professional. Of course, in addition to that, we look for people who have that mission-driven sense of purpose about their work, particularly with immigrant language minority kids, kids in poverty. And, you know, people who have had some experience and have worked in other places, when you talk to them like that, you're going to get a good quality group of people who can say, you know, that's what I want to be part of. I don't want to stagnate in a classroom all by myself engaging in private practice. I want to work in a professional learning community. And people like that choose Creighton.
I was going to follow.
I don't know if I have a lot to add compared to what Mr. Gutierrez and Eric and Mike have added so far, and Faith also. But I'm kind of the outlier in this group in that I think I only hired 3 new teachers through our district. Much to the chagrin of Mr. Gutierrez, some of them followed me over from Kennedy to Gateway, and really trying to emulate the growth that Dr. DeMar had this year, that 28 points. And I think Gateway's really ready and primed to do that, partially from the work that was done leading up to this year by Mr. Wolf with behavior procedures that were put in place and the teachers that created those, and the professional development that's done by our instructional coach, Ms. Quirk, and Ms. Chapin, our SAT, and Ms. Irwin, I'm sorry, our SAT, Ms. Irwin, and our TIF, Ms. Chapin. But as we kind of look in those areas, we're trying to look at that quartile, and not only the bottom quartile, but the appropriate quartile for that student that we're looking at. And we started at Kennedy several years ago looking at specific names instead of numbers. And I think all the schools have kind of taken that role, looking at students specifically instead of just numbers. That being said, I just think we're ready to kind of make that growth as a district that we've seen other districts make. And Mr. Zaragoza, I love your question about, to Ms. Bertamic, about how do you become better than scientists? And I love that question as a parent of a Biltmore Prep children. I just kind of put it back to you. How do you help all 9 of us become better than scientists? And how do you help us maintain the teachers that we have that are working really hard, like Mr. Dupin said, so I don't have to train 14 next year? and I can continue the growth that we've started this year and just kind of keep it rolling forward. So 28 points won't seem so far away next year.
No specific answers today, but I will say that the governing board is always looking to empower our superintendent and leadership team with what they need. So we think you have the expertise. I think this board has definitely demonstrated commitment to do whatever it takes.
Okay, Excellencia is ready to give their report. I actually was going to follow Mr. Dupin just because I think he and I share the commonality of being a focus school, and that's a priority for us. We really want to positively transition from having a focus school status. We have quite a few different discussions with my leadership team about how we can do that. Of course, we are using our RTI model in a very strategic way and just making sure that we are really identifying all of those students who are falling into that bottom quartile, or actually we should say that bottom third, because that's where we're looking as well. We have, and just also speaking to Mr. Madison's point that he brought up about the differences in the students from the bottom of that bottom quartile to the top of that bottom quartile is very different. And so we've been having discussions not only with Mr. Dupin and his leadership team and with the cabinet, but just also within our own group. How do we meet the needs of our students at all levels of that, as well as still taking a look at the 100%? And so we're looking at the materials that we definitely have on campus, but we're also exploring different ways that we can use comprehension, that we can differentiate using our different programs like Math Pathways and Pitfalls, just trying to build that conceptual knowledge so that we're balancing those foundational skills with also that extended learning. We think that that's something that we really need to address in our bottom quartiles, so we're taking a look at that. Another goal we have also is to improve our status with Arizona Learns. Obviously, we'd love to be a B, or definitely an A school. But we want to make sure that we're addressing it in a strategic way. So one of the things that we really identified when we were looking at our data this summer was that we had a low rate of Isella reclassification. And for us, that was a little bit troubling because that's something that, we want to make sure that we're doing so that our students have, that access to being able to be successful and proficient on the AIMS. And we feel like that's something that they can do if they're proficient in English. And so we've really been addressing that with all of our teachers, not just our ELD teachers, because we feel that all of our students are language learners, with about 95% of our students being Hispanic. And so we just really want to make sure that we're addressing those needs through our grammar walls, making sure that all of our teachers are trained with the methodologies that have proven to be effective with our students. And so I know that our instructional coach and I have had lots of conversations. She's done lots of modeling, really addressing those different needs so that we can make sure that we're helping our students so that they can be successful. We also are using our Balanced Math Initiative and the K-3 Literacy Initiative to help with our, not only our foundational skills with our K-3, with the Move On with Reading, but just making sure that we're really looking at both of those areas in a way that really helps our students to become well-rounded scholars, so that it's not that they're just, have the skills that are going to be foundational, but they also, like I said, have those extended learning opportunities so they can make those connections to real life. And so that the concepts in math and in reading really are something that are applicable to them. And so that's, we have a lot of professional development, a lot of coaching. We have a lot of discussions, especially in our primary areas, of how we can really build those foundational skills. And then our upper grades, like how do we kind of make that push, for that application beyond. But one of the things that I think is really, that's been touched on is, with all of my colleagues, that we really need to continually look at our implementation of our instructional strategies in the classroom, because without those, we're really not going to be able to do these other things that we want to make sure are happening. But we're trying to look at it at Excellencia in a differentiated manner, because we have several of our teachers, about 12, that are new, and they are new to the profession in our case. And then we have a younger staff, but they're really great, and they have lots of skills that they've picked up while they've been with us. And so how do we differentiate for that? So how do we make sure that we're addressing the needs of new teachers as well as addressing the needs of our continuing teachers? And we're looking at it in two different ways. One, I think, is really just trying to make sure that our teachers are being really strategic in their planning. And so we've made some refinements to our we're trying to make refinements to our instructional cycle to make sure that in the initial planning period that we're really not just looking at like, okay, this is where the EPO needs to be, but if you're a teacher and you have a lot of students who are ELD, or if you have a lot of students who, you know, are falls far below or at the frustrational level, how are you scaffolding there? But at the same time, we're taking a look at how do you scaffold upwards so that we're making sure that we're hitting and meeting the challenges of our students who really are there and who are ready to make those next steps. So we're really taking a look at that. And then later on in our data meetings, you know, just making sure that we are looking at our students for who they are. So sort of what Mr. Hanfin was saying is just, you know, are we looking at like this student who is in my class and who's not moving is in the bottom quartile? What are the needs, what are the challenges that they have so that we can make sure that we're moving them from this quartile to the next? And so just creating those kinds of discussions in our data meetings to make sure that our next steps in instruction are really strategic and are really meeting the needs of all of our students. But then the second part of effective instruction is also in our CT4S elements. And as Dr. Spiller alluded, that the higher that we see the implementation level of those, then the higher our more likely that our students are going to be making the achievement gains that they need to make. And so for our new teachers, we're really focusing just on making sure that they have really clear objectives that are rigorous and that are clear and defined, making sure that our instructional scaffolding methods are not just one-dimensional, that we have layers to them so that we can really help to make sure that our students are getting all the needs that they have through modeling, guided practice, and small instruction, but then also looking at assessment and engagement just to make sure that we're having those elements. And then with our continuing teachers, we want to make sure that they really are taking a look at like that DOK2. So we're providing professional development to those teachers and coaching through coaching and planning just to make sure that are your objectives written at a rigorous level so that we can make sure that they're not just acquiring the knowledge, but they're actually putting it to use and really extending that use of that knowledge. So I think that you know, it's kind of twofold. We want to make sure that we have the goals that we have for us for student achievement, but how are we going to get there? And for us, it's really just looking at the effective instruction.
In addition to what other people have already said, so I don't want to be too repetitive here, but I want to talk about Papago's ideas this year. Our overarching theme is unity, transparency, and open feedback. We want to use those to confront the brutal facts of what's happened with Papago and what we want to have happen. If you saw the scores, you know that Papago didn't perform very well last year compared to prior years. And we don't want to sweep that under the rug. We want to take and learn from that, and we want to grow and move forward. We want to be a B school again, if not an A school. And we have some ideas in place to help us do that. We know that we have ELD classrooms at every grade level, but we think that all of our students are English language learners, and we want to practice the grammar methodologies in all of the classrooms. So we practice all of the grammar methodologies in the classrooms. We have grammar walls in all of the classrooms, and we're pushing those super strategies for language production in all of our classrooms with all of our students. We want to improve our instructional cycle, especially in the area of coaching, and so we're working closely with the West Ed instructional coach this year to improve our level of clinical supervision, to provide the right feedback to the teachers at the right time, to increase our number of observations. We know that increasing the short cycle feedback to the teachers will help improve them more than anything else, so they need to know what happened as soon as it happened and what they can do to continue good practices and to make revisions to practices that need revision. We also are practicing having our site leadership spend time in classrooms actually teaching. So kind of the boots on the ground kind of approach, where instead of a 10 to 12 minute observation followed by coaching feedback, we do a lot of that, but we also spend 30 to 45 minutes in the classroom teaching a lesson in a classroom that is deemed difficult to really get an idea from our eyes what we can do to diagnose problems and challenges in the classroom to help the teacher make a better informed decision about what to do better next time. So we have the instructional coach, the assistant principal, myself, going into the classrooms and teaching lessons and getting feedback for ourselves that way about student performance and what we can do to help the students and help the teacher do better. All through what we're doing, we want to continuously look for ways to celebrate success, celebrate the things that are working at Papago. especially in the area of academic achievement. And we know that in the past we've done a very good job of celebrating for the child, and I think the parents are informed most of the time, but we really want to make sure that this authentic, relevant achievement is shared with the parent, the children, and the staff of the school. We need to make sure that everybody knows the things that we're doing that are working. We want to make sure that those high school and university connections are made to all three of those groups, not just to the students. As far as the positive behavior intervention and supports, the thing that wasn't mentioned that I will mention, and I think most of us are practicing this, but we have a ratio that we're hanging our hook on this year is 4 to 1. We want 4 positive bits of feedback to a student for every 1 corrective bit of feedback. So we want to make sure that we're providing lots of feedback to the students that's positive, and that we're documenting that, and that we're conveying that data to the students, the staff, and the parents. How well are our students doing in class? How well are our students doing in the hallways, in the cafeteria, in the gymnasium, and celebrate that. And I also wanted to talk just for a bit about the question that came across: why do people choose Creighton School District? Why did people choose Creighton School District this year, people who weren't fresh out of college and things like that? And I think there's some reasons for that that weren't mentioned. That, you know, our Human Resources Department, Dr. Lugo and the HR Department, they do a great job, but our Human Resources Department stretches far beyond that office on Flower Street. You look around this room, and there's a lot of HR directors in this room. You see us at hiring fairs, you see us at workshops, conferences, you see us talking to the professors from the ASU I Teach program, the Teach for America Association, and our reputation has grown a lot in the district over the last 4 to 5 years in a very positive way. And you also see it in informal talks. You see it when we're standing in line at Safeway talking to people who are thinking about getting a teaching degree. I think that our HR outreach in this district comes from everybody. Everybody works for the district. We present ourselves in a positive way, and we recruit in a positive way through our reputation and through what we've learned as a district. So overall, Papago has some ground to make up to get back to where we were and to continue to grow beyond that. And we have a direction that we're going in that's positive, it's time-bound, and it's measurable. And we're excited about the growth that we can make this year. We're excited about sharing that with you as the year goes by.
Mr. Geyer, one of the obvious questions in my mind is, last year, and I guess the end of the school year before, if you had students on 3 different campuses for, wow. How do you see that could have played into what has happened as you had to be spread across those different areas that were miles apart, literally, to be there observing and giving feedback?
I think I quoted that question probably 10 to 15 times this past week in anticipation, so I'm glad you asked it. I was hoping that 7 o'clock would come a little sooner. You know, actually, we didn't set up, obviously, systems to measure that, so we don't have hard and fast empirical data to share with you about how much it impacted, but of course it had a pretty big impact. You know, we were moved out to the other sites, Papago, Kennedy, Loma Linda, and Gateway, and that was abrupt, and we moved in and we made adjustments and we got going. And I think what happened as the year went on, the teachers and the staff and the administration, it just kind of got to us over time. And so when we moved into the new school, we moved in kind of tired, and we moved in kind of beat up and bruised, and all the marks on us were being touched by the 10-foot pole. We moved in with that, and we tried to do our best to keep ourselves going in a positive way, but I think that the move and all of that went with it had a pretty big impact over that. This year we'll see that.
Mr. Geyer, how would you assess the culture of the community and teachers? Is it positive? I mean, I would look at something like this and maybe feel demoralized. So I know the culture itself that has.
One of the most positive starts that I've ever experienced in 14 years in the Creighton School District. Our staff is motivated, our staff is knowledgeable and ready to move forward to make improvements that need to be made. We look at the past, we learn from it, but we're not dwelling in the past. We are moving forward, and the overall tone in the school is positive, it is clinical. Let's figure out what's going on and what we can do to continuously improve. And there's definitely that sense there, which is actually positive. And overall, I would say that the overall culture is positive at Papago.
All right, at Loma Linda, we were very excited and proud to begin the year celebrating our 28 points growth in Arizona Awards to becoming a B school. And we are even more excited to dig in and grow the 6 points needed to become an A school. And it's been very motivating for our staff and our community to work together and do whatever it takes to grow those points. And so as a result, we're continuing to look at everything that we had in place last year as far as what are we teaching, how are we teaching it, how are we responding to kids that aren't getting it, and refining those systems, continuing to be very systematic about how we review data, and not just looking at the bottom quartile, but all of our students that need improvement, and putting those systematic ways in place to look at their growth across time, and then what are we doing to continue to support those students. A couple focus that are continuing from last year, but continuing to look at this year is really that balanced math and the math fluency pieces. We, as a leadership team this year, sat down and really developed a plan of action of how we're supporting our teachers and our students with ensuring that our students become fluent in math, and really supporting our teachers with the implementation and ensuring that that's happening continually in all the classrooms. We also are looking at kind of the PBIS, and we've been fortunate to be a PBIS school for quite a few years, bringing that back and working with the staff that we have in place now, because it is a different staff than 5-6 years ago when we had the PBIS grant, and ensuring that we have that common language across the school and into our classrooms, and that everyone buys into that common language and that systematic routines and procedures that happen across campus and in the classrooms. And particularly first quarter, that's been our focus, to ensure that those pieces are in place. So as we move throughout the rest of the school year, that we're really focusing on the academic achievement and not coming back to what kind of structures and routines are in place across campus. And then as far as Michelle touched on a little bit as well, but really looking at that differentiated support, because we have teachers in different places across our campus, and how are we looking at supporting them at what their current needs are, and it really is differentiated. We can't treat a first-year teacher and third-year teacher the same, and to ensure that we build their capacity to continue to support our students and move all of our students forward, is differentiating the support at different levels to meet their needs. Finally, we spent some time as a leadership team really looking at just how we're teaching comprehension to all of our students, above and beyond just the essential performance objectives, and developing a really systematic plan for how we help support our teachers with teaching the different comprehension strategies to our students. And we're excited to move forward with that this year, because I think that's going to help just take all of our students to a whole other level, as they not only are able to read, but comprehend at different levels of what they have in place. So those are kind of some of the things that we're working on this year as we look to 6 points of becoming a school.
Dr. DeMar, actually my very first board meeting as a member was a school improvement presentation at your school in 2009, and just wanted to commend you on the road to success on your leadership. Congratulations.
Turn it on. I'll be brief. So we can go ahead and move forward with why the real reason we're here, because of our students. I won't go ahead and go into details of what everybody else has said when it comes to what the things that we're doing at Creighton. Yes, at Creighton we may have dropped some points, but I know that based on opening our school this year, and one of the focus that I talked to you, Mr. Sherry, was about building relationships and making sure that we have effective, explicit communication. And one of the things that we did at the beginning of the school year is we made sure that every staff member on our campus feels comfortable coming to us, the site leadership. And all my site leadership is here, the assistant principal, Mr. Carbajal, Mr. Heath, my Title I facilitator, my new coach, Mrs. Wilbanks, and my new SAC, Ms. LeBron. We have made it a focus, a goal to ensure that we're always present for our new staff. We have so many new staff members there at Creighton that we want to make sure that any time that they have a need there at our campus, that they can come to us and feel that they will get an immediate response, an immediate answer to the question, and get the support they need to be successful in the classroom, which will affect, of course, the success that we'll have with our students. So we open up the year with allowing them to know that at any time, it is really important that they should always come to us with anything that they have, any concerns, any questions, to ensure that we have a culture and we continue to build the relationships that are needed for our site to be successful. I know that based on what I've seen so far with our new teachers and our veteran staff, that we can go ahead and move forward and become a B school again, or even a A school.
Thank you. Any further comments from the members? I'd like to adjourn the study session, and we'll reconvene in 6 minutes at 7 for the regular governing board.